So what if I'm not the one that did the offending? What if I was on the receiving end of that and they're the problem? What do I do with that? And is Celebrate Recovery for me, or is it just for the one that did the offense or the betrayal or the mistrust or breach of trust in my life? Celebrate Recovery is for all of us. And today I want to talk about the importance and the process of making space for all of us, whether the one delivering it or receiving the pain. We all need healthy space to deal with the betrayal wounds from the others in our life. Welcome to Hope and Recovery, a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast that shares hope and healing for our mental, spiritual, emotional, and relational journey through life-change stories and recovery topics, all centered around Jesus Christ and the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5 and the Celebrate Recovery principles, where Jesus helps us to face our hurts, hang-ups, and habits so that we can walk with new understanding of healing and hurt and new core beliefs about ourselves, God, and others and circumstances, and walk with new healthy practices so that we can walk in healthy community with the others that God has placed in our life the way He intended, so that we can walk in that newness of life as Jesus died for us. Hey, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I'm the ministry leader and pastor of Celebrate Recovery Fellowship Bible Church, Celebrate Recovery in Rogers. And it's so good to be back with you here today. But today I wanted to, I've been having some conversations with some people, and I actually saw one of our folks, just the timing of it was perfect. They were talking about betrayal trauma and partners. But recently I've been talking to some folks about recovery and who is recovery for, and is it for me, or is it just for the person that actually did the offense against me? So if, we might have a wife or a husband that has a spouse that did something. Maybe there was infidelity, or they were dishonest, and you discovered a large gambling debt, and they've taken out loans and second mortgages, all kinds of different things that catch us off guard. There's many things that can fall into this betrayal, but I think it's important to have a conversation around this, because sometimes we can look at the offender and say, well, that's what recovery, that's who recovery is for. But it's really for all of us. And what is betrayal? I mean, betrayal, it's can stem from a trauma. A real quick recap: what's a trauma? Trauma is when there's this feeling of helplessness combined with somebody that should have been there for us wasn't. That's what makes trauma so heavy. Sometimes we have significant trauma. Sometimes we have little t, big T, if you want to get into that conversation. But trauma is the effect of feeling of helplessness due to an event, and someone should have been there for us and they weren't there for me. So, but this betrayal can stem from some events that deeply impact us as God's kids, as His sons and His daughters, and it can lead to a whole host of feelings of mistrust. Where we feel like, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know what you have done. Will I ever be able to trust you? Will I be able to trust anyone again? That's how serious that pain feels, and just that deep sense of betrayal. Not to mention incredible emotional pain. And in Celebrate Recovery circles, we've talked about this, and this is when we have. Sometimes we've referred to it as broken vows, where we've made these vows in this covenant with our partner, and they betrayed us. They dropped us in that space, and sometimes that can be, it can be infidelity. It can be, deception, where they've been leading a life, and you've discovered these new things, and all these things, they can create incredible emotional pain, and it's kind of a violation of trust and loyalty, especially painful in our closest relationships, just a overriding deception. And so one of those things, just through that rejection can be one of those big things that in this space we can start buying into a narrative that because that this person, whether it's a wife, a husband, maybe it's a mom, dad situation, very close friend, this could even fall into, but because they have hurt us, because they have rejected us, we can start buying, and it kind of throws our whole faith upside down, that if they rejected me, if they betrayed me, maybe God is betraying me, maybe God is rejecting me. And then we start playing into the negative core beliefs. That's the hang up part of this process. We start believing some things about ourselves, about God, and others when we're in pain. And I was talking to some local men about this just recently, that we can fall into this place of just trying to avoid it at all costs. And because we've been rejected, it's hard for us to begin to trust other people. I don't want to be hurt again. And, I went through that with my stepfathers, feeling that being dropped by these safe people, and my mom honestly not having the ability, but it doesn't change the fact that she dropped me. She wasn't there for me. It made it hard for me to learn how to trust people, to let them into what I call the scary parts of my heart. And I started to question my worth. I started to question my usefulness, my value. You're getting into those core beliefs that shame really starts to play into that. And here's where it gets really scary. And this is why when we're talking about is Celebrate Recovery for me, even though I'm not the one that did the offense, because we've experienced this trauma, this pain, the temptation is we start buying into the notion that we've got to try to take care of ourselves, that no one else is going to take care of me. I'm the only one that I can rely on. I'm the only one that I can trust. Just even saying that out loud is scary, but it makes sense that we buy into that notion. And Celebrate Recovery can be a process of helping us understand that when we look at the cross, I love Dan Allender says that when we look at the cross, it reveals who we are and what we need. And so when I look at the cross, I realize that the things that I've done, I need a Savior. And oh, by the way, the things that were done to me, they need a Savior, but I need a Savior from those that were done to me as well. So it's not just the things that I've done that take me into the recovery process. In fact, when I'm talking to parents, I'll tell them, hey, this is going to be hard to hear, but by default, I know you're talking about your family member that was discovered or found out about something, or maybe there's an addiction that landed them in jail. They wrecked your car, betrayal, deep betrayal. Your efforts are trying to get them into recovery, but by default, you're actually in recovery too. And it's always hard to hear that, but if we are wounded at the extent where we feel like, that we can only rely on ourselves, in Celebrate Recovery, we're hitting that right on the head that there's only one God. There's only one who has the right to rule in our life, and his name is Jesus Christ. And when we make it about us under our own power, our own strength, again, it makes sense that we can't trust anybody, and we've equated earth man and woman to our heavenly Father. Then we start thinking, well, I can't trust anybody. I'm the only person that I can rely on and trust is myself. And that becomes scary because now we're playing God with our life. And, it makes sense that we're in the space of I can't trust anybody because the trust has been broken. The loyalty that I thought I had is getting in the way. And so there's a lot of indicators there that can be a good reminder for us that when we have been betrayed and we're experiencing the trauma that we're experiencing, it can take a while for our body, our mind, our heart to get back to a space of buying into new truths that combat the lies. But we got to come into this space and realize, ooh, I'm scared. My struggle may be that I think that I can't trust anyone. I can only rely on myself. And that is a big indicator of separation of trust in God. It makes sense, but I have to call that out. And I'm not going to make myself trust other people, but I need to be honest about it's hard for me to trust anybody because of this inconsistent relationship that I've put my trust in, and we put maybe too many eggs in that basket toward that person, and it just all came crashing down. And so in that space, we have to acknowledge that because we've experienced being dropped, a feeling of helplessness, and who we thought was going to be there for us dropped us. And maybe it's reminded us of some old wounds that came up that come from our family system that can be a reminder that, ooh, this is touching on something from my past. And so, yes, it's about the person in front of me that betrayed me, but it's kind of touching on some things from my past. And so that's what the inventory process is all about, is going back and organizing those parts of our story so that we can heal from those things that may be revealing themselves. Sometimes present trauma can reveal something about our past. You know, our relationships, especially in betrayal, tell us a lot about our own story, tell us a lot about ourselves. And so we need to pay attention to that, because this helpless feeling that we're experiencing because of this betrayal is spinning us out. And let me just validate, it makes sense that you're spinning out. You're human. Anybody in your situation, I don't know specifically what you might be going through, but if you've experienced betrayal and deceit, mistrust, all of those things, it would make sense that it's spinning you out a little bit. And so we have to be honest about that and lean into that. And so some of those characteristics that we can fall into in this space is we start to take things on under our own power. And that can be scary, because now we're not trusting God in that space and we're spinning out a little bit. And so we see this when we've seen someone in an affair. One of those lies that we'll believe in that space is that this must be my fault, that their behavior is a direct correlation to what I have done or not done, or not been enough, or not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not, if I were taller, if I were smarter, if I were shorter, if I had blonde hair, or, whatever. All those things can be indicators that can get us stuck in this space and start to spin us out. And so I want to continue that conversation around that, but I just wanted to start out by just saying that recovery by default is for all of us. And so if you've been offended against, if you've been betrayed, or someone has let you down, by default, you're in recovery, and you need to work the principles just like they do. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like practically with the relationship, but at the very core, you need to be able to work on your recovery. So when we come back, I'm going to continue the conversation around this and unpack a couple other things. Stick with me. I'll be right back. Hey friends, if you're looking for a meeting, Fellowship Bible Church, we absolutely would love to have you come join us at Celebrate Recovery. We meet at the Fayetteville campus, Fellowship Fayetteville, and the Rogers campus, Fellowship Rogers, every Friday night. We have a great Connection Cafe meal at 6 p.m., and then we join a large group experience at 7 p.m. Come join us this week. If you'd like more information, go to fellowshipcr.org. We would welcome you at the front door with open arms and a big smile. Hope you'll join us this week. fellowshipcr.org for more information. Welcome back. Right before the break, just talking about just reassuring you, one, validating that if you're struggling, of course you're struggling. When we have been hit with wounds and been dropped by those people closest to us, that means by default, we need help too. Now, maybe there is a sexual addiction from your partner, a situation that's popped up. And yes, they need to work on them, but you need to work on you too. Now, what does that look like practically? It doesn't always mean that, we just need to go on like everything's fine. There's probably a process. And I want to encourage you, depending on what the betrayal is, you might want to invite your pastor into that conversation. If it's really deep, you might want to consider looking at talking to a therapist, a professional therapist that can help kind of organize what life can look like while you're trying to get the bleeding to stop in your life. That's important, but we'll talk more about that in a second. But I think at the very core, I just want you to hear that recovery is for you as well. Now, sometimes when there's ongoing betrayal and deception, it may not be a surprise, but we have just been in denial about that. So we're actually living in trauma, a traumatic scenario, and we don't even really embrace it because denial is not always like rebellious behavior. Sometimes it's a protection in our brain. It's like, this can't be happening. And so one thing that we see, and this kind of connects with codependency a little bit when you see spouses of addicts, it can be substance abuse, or it can be spouses of pornography or sex addicts. We can develop some codependent tendencies that can almost become enabling, and oftentimes do become enabling. And we've done some conversations around that. But one of those things that we'll do is we'll pretend to extended family, and sometimes even to our immediate family that are in the home, we protect the one who is offended, and try to keep that individual from being seen as the one who's breaking confidence, breaking vows, whatever that is. Maybe it is an addiction, a compulsive behavior. And so we'll actually pretend to family and friends or coworkers that everything is fine. In fact, if they don't show up for family settings or something, we'll make something up to protect them. But now you're getting into some enabling process. And so sometimes we're in the trauma, we're not surprised by it, but the reality of it hasn't set in yet. And we just try to avoid. And eventually it ends up coming up sideways and coming out sideways. And so we over a period of time, we'll begin to realize, oh, this is too much. And so if it is something like that, it's kind of the same scenario, which can be painful, especially painful because you've been living in it. It's not just this big surprise that's dropped in your lap. It's changed your process of living life. And so in that space, whether it's a surprise or you've been walking in it, one of those tendencies that we can fall into is we try to take justice in healing into our own hands, and it becomes our own defense and our protection. And so we become very critical and unforgiving toward that person, and they're the problem. They need to work on them, and the reality is they are the problem, but you by default are brought into that process. And so sometimes we can become very critical, and we can use our anger as a tool and as a weapon, which becomes very, very, destructive for ourselves. And so jealousy can kick in, anger, unresolved rage. Sometimes it can be toward the partner. Sometimes it can be toward pornography itself, and we micromanage. At that point, we're just trying to stay alive, and it's not our job to manage their behavior. And that's so important to hear, that, let them work their recovery, and it's not our job to manage their recovery. There's consequences. If they continue in a behavior, then there's consequences that come with it. That's where a pastor can be real helpful, but it takes a conscious effort to lean into the hurt and surround ourselves with healthy community to organize the pain, to almost kind of drop down into that hard part of our story, and not as a blaming. Sometimes it can be misunderstood that if I'm coming to recovery for my spouse or my partner that has done an offense toward me, that we come into the circle of Celebrate Recovery and we just bash our partner. In fact, it couldn't be further from the truth. We're actually coming in, we're being honest. We got to be honest about the pain. Some might perceive that as bashing, but the only way I can heal through that trauma experience is to drop into that story in safety of community. And sometimes we may need therapy on the side in addition to this, but to be able to drop into my story and organize it and process it, knowing someone else is on the receiving end. That's the thing about shame. Shame is not only affected by individuals. It can infest a whole community. If one is dealing with shame, chances are the family will, and the community, the church, and it spreads like a wildfire. The beautiful thing about the shame that we carry in, if something has happened and you've been believing the lies that this somehow was my fault. As a kid that was abused and the trauma of being abused, I believed it was my fault. If I'd just been smarter, which is really distorted, but that was the shame, that this must be me. I'm bad. If I were better, this wouldn't have happened. And the reality is it wasn't my fault, but when I get into community and allow we need multiple voices, healthy, safe voices around us through those accountability partner relationships and mentor or sponsor, we call them Celebrate Recovery. We need those people. We need as many voices as we possibly can speaking against those lies so that we can begin that process of recovery and healing and rebuilding the foundations of how God sees us, begin seeing ourselves different, a foundation only found in Jesus Christ. And to know that we're not shaming our partner by talking about the feelings. We're not bringing shame on them for talking about the pain that they caused us. We're just being honest about that. And so, but it may be a situation where we're not able to be in a regular ongoing relationship with them, especially if it's an abusive situation. Make sure you're in a safe situation. Consult your pastor and even professionals to make sure, is this a safe place for you? But in the case of there's an affair, discover they've have a hidden secret to pornography, those can be things that maybe there's some parameters around how we interact, and sometimes that does involve a separation. Again, follow your pastor's counsel on that. But the main thing is make sure you're in a safe place. But in the process, your recovery is your recovery. So we get in that circle. We're not bashing our partner, but we are saying, hey, this happened and this is how it impacted me. This is how it made me feel. This is how I tend to think. I tend to think I'm not enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, or whatever those things are that we're believing. We're not bashing our partner. We're actually taking it to the Father, realizing in this space that I can't control the other person. I can control what I do if they do what they do, but I can't control what they do. But I can take my pain to the Father, knowing that He will be the master of helping me through that, and through my emotional, my mental, my spiritual health, be able to organize that in the safety of community, so I can ultimately start facing the denial in my life, and ultimately walk in that newness of life as Christ wants me to accept responsibility. And I know that sounds weird. It's not our fault what happened to us, but it is our responsibility now. And it is our responsibility for what we do moving forward from here. It doesn't give us justification because we've been through a bad situation of betrayal, mistrust, or whatever. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility what we do with that. And so however you've experienced trauma, betrayal, I just want you to know that there is a healing path, and Celebrate Recovery can help you with that. But it's going to involve your vulnerability, or as we say often, rigorous honesty. Sometimes it is therapy in conjunction with what you're doing in Celebrate Recovery. You can seek that out and see if that's for you. But there's this process of rebuilding trust, and starting with your relationship with the Lord, especially if you've thought, I can't trust you either, God. And it's weird to say that out loud, but sometimes we believe that. We have to set some boundaries with the offending partner. Again, if you're in an unsafe place, your safety is number one. But allow time. And here's the thing, giving yourself grace in this process. Anyone in your situation, it would take time to work through that. And so allow time for that emotional, mental, spiritual healing. That can be hard because we just want the quick fix, drive through recovery, I call it. But if you start engaging back in repairing the relationship, it's going to take both partners a willingness to do their part, to take responsibility, and eventually through that process repair the damage that's been done. But you individually, regardless, can experience healing through that process as you actively engage in that healing process, and again, seek professional help if you need that. I just wanted to create a little bit more language around that. I may do another podcast on this, but if you have experienced that space of mistrust, betrayal, emotional pain from someone who's broken, or you've experienced this breach of trust from someone that you loved and cared, maybe it's infidelity or deception, these are important things for you to lean into. Maybe it's dishonesty. Maybe this person has a lack of empathy and an unwillingness to come toward you to talk about that, to repair that, to take ownership. Or just maybe there's a pattern of a deceitful behavior in your partner kind of thing. All those things are very real, and through boundaries, as I was talking about earlier, and guidance through others, healthy, safe others that are for you and your marriage. There's things that you can do to keep yourself safe while you're actually working through your process. But make no mistake about it, recovery's for you too. In fact, if you don't, you're going to carry that onto another relationship, or you're going to carry that onto the existing relationship. As they heal, you will be further behind in your own healing process. It's going to make the process of repairing that relationship that much harder. And it's essential that you both are in recovery and you have safe people where you can be honest, rigorously honest, not bashing, not talking bad about them, but talking about the pain. And that's not talking bad. That's just saying, when this happened, it made me feel, to really get into the pain, to re-enter those sacred spaces where that wound occurred in your life and the system and your family that needs to be addressed, to be experienced and organized, put into words, and then with safe people, with God, to be able to share that and allow the Holy Spirit to bring healing to that. In His timing, we will grow through the pain together. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. Just, some conversations just got me to thinking, Celebrate Recovery is not just for those people. It's for all of us people, whether we're the one that's been offending, or maybe as a result from being hurt, we've hurt other people, hurt people, shame people, but healed people heal people. And we hope that you'll make this a safe space to be able to process your hurts, hangups, and habits, regardless of the betrayal, the offense, the mistrust, the breach of trust or confidence that have happened in your life. We'd love to create safety for you to find healing from all of that. Hey, if you'd like more information about Celebrate Recovery, as always, fellowshipcr.org is a great spot to go to. We're here every Friday night. We hope you'll join us. Thanks so much for being with me today. I pray that you'll join me next time. Until then, God bless you.